Welcome. Hello, Anjema. Welcome to our Nirvana Shatakam Companion Study Series. So some of you may have been present live for Acharya Shunya's teachings on the Nirvana Shatakam. Maybe some of you have been watching those videos. Maybe some of you, this is all fresh and new. Anywhere you are in that exploration, this is a beautiful place to be right now. So welcome. And let us begin with our opening prayer and start our review and churning and contemplation session together. So I'll share the screen and you can chant along if you wish. Gratitude for our teacher, our teacher's teacher, and the many, many teachers, going back and back and back to that ultimate truth. We express our gratitude. So let us chant. Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Om Shanti Prakashaya Namaha. Om Ayodhyanataya Namaha. Om Shunyacharya Namaha. Om Atmatattvam Namaha. Om Vidyatattvam Namaha. Om Suryaya Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. So previously in this series, we have been looking at each verse. And we are going to today use the second verse. We're on verse 2 of this 6-verse series. We're going to use this verse to expand kind of our both and thinking. And this means that we're going to be bringing awareness to that inner observer. And we're seeing if we can stretch and relate to and act in this material world, but also be progressing on our spiritual journey with the ultimate goal of realization, of waking up from this worldly transactional reality dream that we're having. So we're going to use this verse to help us explore how our identity gets tangled up in certain ways. We're going to look at observing how, when we observe those coverings, those entanglements, those sticky parts, when we observe that, what benefits do we experience here in this transactional reality? While we're in this worldly world, what benefit does that observing tangibly have for us? And then today also, we're going to practice just coming back to that self-awareness. Remembering that we do, no matter what benefits we experience from our spiritual journey in this worldly world, we do have this ultimate goal of transcending and going beyond. All right. So let's begin. I'll share with you the text of this first verse and we'll look at that together. So here's our verse for today. This is the second verse in the text. So we'll hear it in the Sanskrit, and then the next slide will have the translation as well. So you can just enjoy the sound of these words or try and pick out a few of these words that are beginning to sound familiar to you on your journey. So verse 2 goes, Na cha prana sanyo, na vai pancha vayu, na va sapta dhatur, na va pancha kosha, na vak pani padau, na chopasta payu, chidananda rupa, shivoham, shivoham. And this verse is telling us Neither am I the vital breath, nor the 5 vital airs. Neither am I the 7 tissues, nor the 5 sheaths. Neither am I the organ of speech, nor the organs for holding, the hands, or of movement, of locomotion, our legs, or of procreation, our genital organs, or of excretion, and the word used here is for the anus. I am the ever blissful, pure consciousness. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. So this is our verse for today, and I'll explore each of those words because when we hear vital airs, that sounds very maybe abstract and obscure. So let's look at what each of those words mean and connect them because they're all describing something physical in our body or a physical action that the body has. So let's look at those words together. So when it says prana, it's talking about the breath. It's talking about that vital air, that seeming, that inhalation and exhalation, the thing that carries an energetic quality of sustenance into the body. And it talks about the panchavayu. These are the 5 kinds of movement that vital air has in our body. It has the inhalations and the intake and the exhalations and the expelling. It has the circulating, it has the holding, it has all the movements that happen inside of our body are due to what is called vayu, this air movement inside of the body. The sapta dhatu, these are the 7 bodily tissues. These are in Ayurveda, we describe these different types of tissues the body has, and we'll explore those. Then we also hear about the Panchakosha. And the Panchakosha, you may be familiar with this, or this may be again a new word, but these are these recognized coverings that we have over the body, over the self. One of which is the body, the mind, the intellect, or our wisdom and belief covering. We also have the breath is kind of a covering over the self. And we'll explore even that bliss covering that we experience. We'll explore that too. Vak means speech. Pani is hands. Padam, feet. Upastha, this reproductive organs or the genitals. And payu is our excretory organs. Specifically, technically, this is saying anus, but means the thing that excretes bodily waste. So when we look at these list of bodily pieces that we possess, these kind of form almost like a mechanical apparatus of the body. And each of these have a very real and very necessary utility, purpose, usefulness in this transactional world. And they also are all the ways that we interface with this transactional world. The way we bring it in and let it out, the way we act upon it, the way we communicate with it. Like, this is all about this structure, this mechanism that we have and how it interfaces. And yet, very often, this suit that we're wearing, we become very much identified with it. And it takes over our idea of who we are. I am this body, I am what I can say, I can, all these things. And when we excessively identify, when we entangle with all of these components, we get distracted, we get boxed in, we get cut off from an awareness of our true spiritual self. I'm sure that this experience of feeling what we could describe as like body bound, we sometimes feel encased inside, trapped inside, stuck inside our body and its abilities or its health or its needs or its wants or its capacity. And this verse is speaking to that experience. It's saying, yeah, We have all of this mechanism, which is useful, and yet it can close us off in some way to our greater identity. So these are what, again, the theme, the word that keeps coming up in Acharya Shunya's teachings and in the Vedanta teachings is about these coverings over the self. And Nirvana Shatakam brings us to light many, many different kinds of coverings, but today we're talking about the ones of the body. So we've explored this concept of adhyaropa, of superimpositions. And these are layers, these are coverings, these are things that seem to, mm, like icing, like layers of icing on the cake. They seem to cover us up and cover us up. And so our path here in Vedanta, as you're maybe well aware, is to identify what are those coverings. Because we are so glued into them, we're so submerged in them and entangled in them that often we can't even see what they are. We don't even recognize that they exist. So first, this first 5 verses of this text just simply names them. It says, look, let's name it. And that way we can observe it. And we can identify it and recognize when we're able to look at these coverings, we can see that they're constantly changing, they're evolving, they're growing, existing for some time, and then falling away. That tells us they are not the self. So in this journey of identifying, observing, and then recognizing that we are the observer of those coverings, this is our Vedanta path. Verse 1, we looked at, that described the coverings that make up the subtle body, the mind, its subtle function. And so here in verse 2, we're looking at these coverings of the gross body, of the material body, and its functions and its actions. There's a journey here that we're all of us on in this Vedanta path. All of us human beings, we start out as fully entangled, and we believe that those coverings are us, and they give us an identity and an existence and a meaning and a value. And then we're introduced to this practice of neti neti, where we observe those coverings, identify them as not the self. Each verse of the Nirvana Shatakam will highlight a different aspect on which we will then negate. And through that process, it keeps guiding us to realign with the observer, the thing that is covered by those superimpositions. And we'll notice, and that's what we'll explore today, that that process itself gives us some relief, reclaims back to us some power inside of this transactional reality. We become more intelligent operators of this body machine when we are more stepped into the observer rather than fully enmeshed and entangled with it. And also the reminder that Acharya Shunya teaches us, and that comes again and again, is that the negation of saying this is not the self is not the same as rejection or denying or throwing it out. So we're conducting this process, and this is the intermediary step. This neti neti, it starts out as a method. It starts out as a practice. And eventually, through its consistent application, it becomes our lived moment-to-moment experience. That I see and observe my body and all of its activities and all of its capacities, but I know that I'm not that. I'm the observer, I'm the witness, I'm the self. So eventually we are able to shed those superimpositions. What is not the self? And we explore what remains. We explore what remains. So our steps today that we'll do, we'll look at each of these named superimpositions. We'll just remind ourselves what it looks like when we're fully entangled with them. We'll look at what impact it has when we do step back into the witness of those superimpositions, what impact that has on our transactional day-to-day reality. And then we'll come back, we'll experience, we'll practice just being back with the self, um, and reconnecting to our goal of transcending. Despite all of the benefits we experience in the here and now, in the tangible world, we'll remember our goal is not only that, it's that, to be one, remembering our deepest self. So let's look at this first set of words that come in this verse. This describes the first line here talks about prana, panchavayu, saptadhatu. This includes the breath, all its functions. This also, I'm lumping all together these words in this verse that describe the body's internal activities and its structure. So this is talking about the different movements of air in the body, all the different tissues we have. When we're deeply entangled and enmeshed with the breath, the function and the movement, of that air inside the body, we feel without a doubt, unquestioningly, that when breath is present, that means we're alive. That means we exist. And we have a belief that when the breath stops, our existence is stopped. We're being asked here to observe the breath and see if there maybe is a presence beyond the breath. We also can get entangled when we get entangled with the breath and feel that that is our method to reach the self. We become very invested in controlling the breath, moving the breath, connecting with the breath. It becomes more than a tool, but it becomes an obsessive tool. It becomes something we're overly identified with. How much pranayama have I done? Have I done it this way? Have I done it that way? So that becomes very important for us to feel like we're on our path. But when we step back and we observe the breath, there's some benefits that happen. Have you noticed when you feel emotional, you feel angry, or you feel sad, or you feel grief, just observing the breath, suddenly our emotions and thoughts don't rise and fall with the breath. When we observe, we're able to be present. We're able to be more mindful. We're coming into this present moment. So it's a tool for us, but we are not dependent or existent on it. And we'll experience this together. Then we look at the body tissues. We get so wrapped up in this physical body, how it's looking, how its health is, what are its lab report results, what's the color of the hair. It used to be nice and brown and now it's becoming gray. We identify with the bodies of other people. We look at their physical form, and that suddenly is supposed to give us a lot of information about them. We feel um, we feel so attached to this physical form, wanting to extend its life, improve its life. It's a constant, effortful work to keep this body going because we feel so dependent on it. Our life and our identity feel so linked to it. So when we observe the body, when we spend time coming into an observer and just experiencing the body as it is, just simply witnessing it, the benefits we have in this transactional world are things like it kind of tempers our worldly ego uh, of getting overinflated or getting needlessly wounded when our body changes, when we turns out the shape of our face or the shape of our body isn't the most socially beautifully celebrated version. When our features aren't exactly symmetrical, when our someone may be missing limbs or be misshapen in some way. We don't, our sense of who we are is separate from that. Our physical attributes don't make us feel so special nor so cursed. Our sense of self remains equipoised and balanced inside of that. Also, when we spend time observing the physical body, our fear and preoccupation with our health kind of gets checked. We stop obsessing over our health, fearing onset of disease. We take care of our body and its tissues with reverence and care because it's the seat of our self. It's integral to our machine. It allows us to exist and transact in this world. But we can care for it in a little more of a relaxed way, knowing there's some part of us that is beyond this physical body. We know why we're caring for it, not to prolong its existence at all costs, but as a responsibility, as a caretaking, as an alignment with the natural flow of nature. Um, so like that, our relationship with our body is shifted. So I'll invite you now to let's let's just experience inside of us these the prana, the panchavayus, the saptadhatus. Let's just take a moment to settle into our experience of these. So I'll invite you to just sit comfortably where you are, and with intention, we're going to bring our awareness first to the breath. You can sit with your eyes open, with your eyes closed, however is comfortable. But I'd like you to notice it's entering the body and it's exiting the body. Bringing full awareness to the movement of the inhalations and the exhalations. And become aware of the part of you that is simply observing that breath. Remembering I am not the breath, I'm the witness of this breath. And even more subtly, bring awareness to the internal activity and motions inside of your body. Knowing that there is circulation, there is digestion, there's constant growth. Become aware of the body and its constant activity and how that is being regulated by something called a vayu. There's a regulated activity inside of the body. And stepping back from that activity inside the body, remembering that I'm the witness of my body's activities internally. I'm an observer of my body's intelligent movements. And finally, awareness on your physical being. Becoming aware of the warmth, the structure of your physical body. Bringing awareness that there is moisture, there is hardness, There is space. There is blood and muscle and fat and bone and nerves and reproductive tissues, all existing, pasted together, creating this physical form. There's aches, pains, feelings of ease and comfort. And remembering that this body is not me. And the presence and awareness that is encased in this body. The movements of the breath, the activities of the internal organs, the physical state of the tissues, they come and go and change. But I, as the observer, remain. Thank you for bringing that awareness. I invite you now to come back to our classroom. And I wonder, as you shed those coverings, those subtle and gross coverings, what, if any, relief do you feel? What, if any, power do you uncover? What fears are released? What limiting beliefs fall away? So, in this practice of observing these specific named coverings over the self, what comes up in you? And noticing that all of this is itself happening inside of this transactional reality. These are any relief, any empowerment, any freedom or courage or ease you begin to feel in these parts of you. These are just benefits that come in our transactional reality. We experience these benefits along the way. So I share this because, yes, we have this goal to shed. And as we've been told many times, the unique thing about this process is in the shedding, we don't feel less, we actually feel more. We feel like we're, a fullness is there with us. So reflect on that as well as you do this practice of stepping away from the breath and the inner activity and the physical body. Do you feel like you're losing something? Or does it feel different? Is there a wholeness, a fullness that is there? So this is another aspect of the neti neti process, is coming back to that exists underneath all of those coverings. Let's look at this next set of descriptions of coverings that we are suggested to investigate by this text. This is when Adi Shankaracharya points us to these organs of action. He points us to our speech, our hands, our feet, our genitals, our anus. These are all collectively called these organs of action. And these are the ones that interface with the world. This is how we act on the world. And yet we can get so entangled isn't it? Just to note some of these, there are many ways, there are many hallways we can get lost in all of these coverings. So when it comes, say, to our speech, um, we can get entangled with our speech. We can feel that believing that what we say and what we exhibit to the world, how we use our voice is what gives us meaning. It's what defines us. What we say out loud is what defines us. Maybe we can even extend this to thinking of social media. What I write, what I post, what I broadcast in the digital world makes it real, makes it have happened. It says something about me, and it builds this um, with our speech or anything. It builds a persona that I am attached to, that I'm cultivating through my speech. I'm cultivating this idea of myself. But when we observe our speech, when we step back from the words that we are saying, when we're asking, where are these words coming from? What do they really mean? Are they really connected to who I deeply am? As we detach a little bit from those words, our ability to speak, what naturally arises when we reorient ourselves to I am the self covered in this capacity for speech. I am the self, which is superimposed on this organ of action that can make noise and communicate. What naturally arises often is something like a straightforwardness. Our speech takes on new qualities. We become more straightforward. We become more truthful. Our words are clearer. Uh, they're full of kindness, compassion. So like this, we have this benefit of coming back to the self as the witness of this organ of action of speech. And we notice that that organ of action of speech changes when we witness it. And there's many positive benefits to this inside of transactional reality that we experience in a growing way through this process of keep neti. We also come to realize that the self, coming to the self, it's actually this indescribable state. There are no words to describe the self. And that's why we're doing the neti process, because we can't be taught what is the self. We can only be pointed out what is not, what is not, what is not, what is not. So when we keep trying to use our words, it keeps us in that experienced mode. As we observe our speech, we become a little less concerned with the importance of speaking my truth, having the last word, saying, being heard and understood and appreciated for what I can say and what I need to say. We can simply be our truth. And that gives a relief as well. When we look at this idea of the hands and feet as organs of action, when we're deeply entangled with what we can grasp and create and do and move with our hands, where we can go, where we can take ourselves with our ability to move, which is here represented by the feet, we can often become consumed in doing and acting our way to awakening. Of course, there are many other things that can happen when we are so attached to grasping and going and achieving and scaling heights and things like that. But I'm saying in the context of the impact it has when we are entangled with these on our spiritual journey is that we get so stuck in, if only I can master that asana, if only I can go on that pilgrimage, if only I can learn this other healing modality to use my hands, if only I can, um, you know, do more of these practices and pujas and things with my physical body, my ability to act, then I'll surely wake up to the self. So it becomes all about grasping, chasing, and we become so locked into this idea that we have to do more, do the right thing, be in the right place for us to experience the self. But when we step back and observe our ability to grasp and do with the hands, our ability to go and move, our body's capacity for action and movement, that kind of softens. That softens. In a positive way, when we again stop breathlessly chasing the grasping and movement of the hands and feet, but again step back and observe them, see it as a covering, a tool, a mechanism, part of our grand setup that the body has, we can now make more conscious choices about how we use our hands and feet. What is our lifestyle going to be that is conducive to our soul's journey? We don't have to go on a pilgrimage to find the self. We come right back here and experience it right where we are. This is the benefit that we have in the transactional world of observing. And also when we look at the genital organs, the sexual organs, the reproductive system of the body, what we have, what kind of reproductive system we have, when we're entangled with it, it causes us to make a lot of choices, chasing its gratification and its pleasure, of course. Causes us to have a certain identity of suddenly something about the shape of our physical body, what kind of reproductive system we have, comes loaded with and carried with things that we can and can't do. Our capacity, our value, our roles, all these things come packed into it. Which just because we have that setup, we internalize and act that way in society also. So we can soften our identification with that, what our reproductive system asks us to chase. We can reclaim our power there. And also being so defined and directed by what that kind of genital reproductive system means we have to do and be. We get a lot more freedom there, a lot more freedom there as well. And then with our organs of elimination, when we step back and observe our body's rhythm of regularly eliminating waste, we observe that we have inbuilt in our body system a system of releasing what is no longer needed. We are able to let go of all that doesn't serve us. And it's done just as a matter of fact, without kind of fanfare. It's just a letting go, just a letting go. Figuratively, literally, we have an elimination process. And like that, in this transactional world, our body remains linked into this natural cycle, these natural cycles of taking in and letting go of what we no longer need. So there's an ease that comes. We are no longer holding longer than we need to. We're letting go and releasing in a natural and timely way. So I invite you now to take a moment and let's observe these parts of ourselves. Where you are again, settle in. And we're first going to look at this organ of speech, our voice. And maybe first you bring attention to your physical throat area, the airway where speech emerges, the part of the body that is a physical muscle that contracts and constricts, extends to allow speech to happen. To the throat, to the mouth, to the tongue, to the teeth, the lips, the jaw, all this physical part of our body that allows speech to emerge. And simply observe it. take a moment to look at our ability to speak. When we talk about what is my voice, what is my expression, recognize that you have that capacity and ability, and simply observe it. How forcefully, how eloquently, how sweetly, how harshly you speak. That has no impact on the self-observing. What words we say doesn't change our deepest truth. Bring awareness to the hands and the feet. And observe that your body has these incredible tools to engage with the world, to act in the world, to move. Marvel for a moment at the hand's ability to reach out and grasp, to manipulate materials and create. Marvel at your body's ability through its legs, through its feet, to be able to move through the world. And if for any reason your hands or your feet are not operable, there's still some way that you're able to pull toward and move through the world. So not even the physical hands or the feet, but what they represent. And observe that ability. And note that your ability to grasp, your ability to move is yet another covering over the self. The self needs nothing to be grasped. It is still. So notice the inner stillness and the outer ability to move. Bring awareness to your reproductive system. And step back and simply observe it. Yes, it's there. Yes, it serves biological functions. And we are the observer, the witness of that covering that's part of the body. And awareness to the excretory system, the waste relieving system of the body. Yes, it's there. And we're observing it. We are the witness of our body's ability to relieve waste. The simple observer, the presence. Take a deeper breath and come back where we are. So when we look at each of these individually, it sort of puts them back in their place as simply tools and structures that we use. And we may not even be consciously aware that we may be identified with our waste relieving system. But taken in totality, these organs of action, we definitely can say we get kind of caught up in who we are with these organs of action. So take a moment to just consider quietly for yourself, when I shed these coverings, my speech is a covering, hands, legs, genitals, waist, relieving. When I shed them, what relief might I feel? Is there any new power uncovered? Are there maybe any fears that are relieved? Limiting beliefs that fall away? When we don't identify with these as who we are. And lastly, we are brought to look at I want to now bring in the Panchakoshas. It came earlier in the lines of the verse, but we'll explore it now. The Panchakoshas are these 5 sheaths that are described. There's this food-based sheath, the Annamaya Kosha, which is our physical body, which we have just explored. The Pranamaya Kosha, the breath sheath, which is that movement of air, which again we have explored today. There's that Manomaya Kosha of the mind, thoughts, the feelings, that we've explored in verse 1. And the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the kind of wisdom sheath. This was explored in verse 1 as well. So now in this verse, the 5th sheath is the one that's left to explore, the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath, they call it. So here we have this 5th sheath, the bliss sheath. And the first 4 we looked at in previous verses and in classes. It is important to look at this bliss sheath because it's not come up previously. And so there's a really good reason to look at it and again do this neti practice with it. What happens is when we negate those other sheaths as we've done, and we begin to feel lighter and lighter and lighter and light filled, it's very possible that that bliss sheath, the bliss sheath is the one that is the closest to the self. It's the experience of the bliss that is maximally reflecting and shining with the self's light. At first, we touch that bliss sheath and we think we've made it. We've found it. We're here. We've arrived. Finally, in front of us has appeared the thing we've been waiting and working toward. And yet we find that those experiences of bliss, they come and go. We touch it and then it leaves. So we don't want to get stuck here thinking we've arrived at the bliss sheath, but we're just at the threshold. We're so close. So this investigation of the bliss sheath is very key because at that moment we don't want to stop our journey. When we experience the bliss sheath, we're still in that observer observed mode. There's a part of us that's saying, I am feeling bliss. I am feeling bliss. And when we ever have that kind of statement, it means we're still observing a part of us. So we still are ready to transcend further. So here we can, again, even when we touch that place of seeming inner bliss, again, we come back to and apply this method of neti. Again, we remember to become, I'm the observer of this experience of bliss. And when we do that, um, we receive a transactional reality benefit in the sense that our journey continues. We don't cut ourselves short, and it's pleasant. It's pleasant. So I'm bringing this reminder here so that as you continue to unveil, 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 when you touch that place of bliss, you recognize it for what it is, that it itself is also a kind of covering. So these are the coverings explored in verse 2. And then comes this final line of the verse. And I said at the beginning of the verse that we would be asking ourselves to stretch our thinking into it also, and we are looking at observing in a transcendent way, coming home to the self, and seeing the body's utility, usefulness inside the transactional world. So I hope some stretching in that way has happened where we're holding both. We're expanding our thinking enough where we can hold both, negating the physical body, but not rejecting it, not trying to cast it aside, but negating it as not the self. And now this final line of the verse brings us into that transcendental place where it invites us to recall and settle back into who we truly are. And the final line of that verse here is Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So these benefits that we've experienced in the transactional reality of the neti neti, they're helpful, they're meaningful, they support us on this journey to ourselves. The experience of samsara becomes less abrasive. We start riding these waves of samsara, of the uh, reality that we seem to all be living in, but is not the self, rather than drowning in it. And yet we recall, and this line reminds us, that the purpose is not to get more comfortable where we are. The purpose is not to get more comfortable in this hot entanglements, but the purpose is to move toward a recognition of our deepest and essential nature of the self. So each verse of Nirvana Shatakam ends in this refrain and says, Chidananda Rupa, of the consciousness, the bliss, the, the form of that pure consciousness and bliss. That is who I am. Shivoham, Shivoham. I am Shiva. I am Shiva. Shiva in a very expanded meaning of it, and we explored that deeply in the session previously, the session just before this last week, of these meanings of Shiva. So let us spend one moment now just letting these words of this line reverberate in us. I invite you again to go within and let land inside of you this reminder that I am pure conscious awareness. I am wordless, indescribable bliss. I am Shiva, the all-encompassing, full spectrum of this universe of divine awareness. That is who I am. So let this reminder come. Shed, 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 and now we remind. So we speak to ourselves, whether in thought or you can say aloud, maybe even with a hand on the heart. Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. And after all of the thinking, discerning, observing, this neti neti process, technique, method, now we simply dissolve it all. We even let go of the neti neti and we resolve back into who we truly are, this Shiva, the inner Ishvara. I'm going to stop here. And in these last few minutes we have left, I invite any sharing, any reflections that have come up in this process. So if you would like to share anything, you're very much welcome to bring your words, use your Vak capacity and share something. And if you're feeling quiet, that's perfectly fine also. Mhm. Deborah, yes.
This has been really very, very helpful and very settling, I would say, and grounding. And I've been feeling so kind of stuck in this kind of stepping back and just observing and observing, coming back to this. It's it's such a powerful reminder, even if I've heard it 1,000 times or have thought about it and I have read it over and over again. But the just the practice, just the practice of observing in that way is just amazing. So very helpful. So very helpful. So thank you for this process, for sharing the process with us. Thanks so much.
Whatever, yes, a practice, a process, and we keep coming back. hmm Feeling relief along the way, yet still remembering where we're going. Yeah. Anyone else like to share a reflection or how this is landing with them today? Okay. Mhm. Beautiful. Well, let us close today. And the prayer we always close with, Asatoma, is a constant reorientation. And I think that's also what this Neti Neti practice does. It keeps orienting us, orienting us. We're pulling out our compass and saying, am I headed north or am I really headed south? I want to go in one direction. And so the Asatoma prayer is saying, lead me not, take me away from untruth to truth. Great, let me go from darkness to light. Let me go from this engrossed entanglement in the world as it is, thinking it's so real, to the pure bliss, unadulterated, unending bliss of the self, waking up to that inner journey. So I invite you to join me in that. Together we can chant. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace. All right. Jai Ma, everyone. Take care, and we'll meet again either this week or these sessions now are happening twice a month. So you can look for that on the calendar. And we'll see you later this week for other sessions with Acharya Shunya. Jai Ma, take care.